You are listening to The Summit. I'm Chad Miller, and we are joined here by Deego from the band Fontaines DC, who have released a pretty solid album earlier this summer. Their second full-length called A Hero's Death, released on July 31st of this year, 2020, on Partisan Records. Deego, thanks for joining us. Good to see you and hear from you.
Hey, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm pretty good. So you're coming to us right now from Paris, France, right? Where you looks like you just left the cafe to get to a better vantage point or better able to hear.
Yeah, it's all the typical cliches, of a Westerner in Paris, for sure.
Well, thanks for taking the time to join us today. Excited to talk to you about this record. It is so good.
Thanks very much.
So you're welcome. And well, let's get to one of these songs right away here. We're going to start with the title track from the new album. This is A Hero's Death from Fontaines DC here on The Summit. It is The Summit with new music from Fontaines DC. That was A Hero's Death, the title track to the band's new record, released on July 31st on Partisan Records. I'm Chad Miller, joined here by Deego, who's in the band. And I got to ask you this first. I found this interesting. You guys all met in college and bonded over a common love of poetry for such intense music. I guess, I don't know. I won't say I was surprised by that, but I found that rather unusual. Tell us about how you guys all met.
Well, we were all in the same year in music college in Dublin, sure, but I think what really bonded us together was, well, what made us notice each other was that I remember Carlos had a book of Walt Whitman in his jacket pocket, and that just kind of made me drawn towards him, and we started talking about poetry and sharing books and ideas and stuff, and we kind of formed our own little community within the music college, and it slowly kind of emerged to be creating poetry books together, and we did some nights in Dublin to launch those books, and we tried to get them into the bookshops in Dublin. We got them into a couple of them, and we kind of we had a pre-existing band, but it was very different to the music we make now, and it had a lot of the people in it that were making the poetry as well. So these two things slowly over time coalesced and became Fontaines DC.
Well, the song we just played, "A Hero's Death," title track of the album. There is, I love the music video for this song. In fact, it's really quite creative. It really kind of reminds me of I don't know, like a David Lynch film. You're on like a fictional late night talk show, the Georgie Barnes show, and it's sort of, I don't know. You're playing a song on the show, but the host becomes sort of a puppet of himself. Explain this music video. Probably do it better than I could, but I love it though. It's really cool to watch.
Thanks very much. I actually wrote that video with you, so we developed it together, and we basically wanted to get a feeling of the repetition of the everyday, and what kind of people hide under the surface of things, and I suppose, but like each rotation is supposed to reveal more and more, the memories and the different things that influenced Georgie Barnes into treating the people the way he does and feeling the way he does about himself, and that's kind of best example of that is what, slowly over the repetitions, the secretary who he sexualizes eventually becomes his mother, and it's kind of the Freudian thing, I suppose, but I suppose it's just an examination of like the superficial ways we talk and interact with each other on a daily basis, and how that might disguise sorry, that's loud, and how that might disguise what's going on underneath. And I suppose the lyrics of A Hero's Death are kind of these affirmations of all of these things, positive affirmations, but I suppose the video is trying to give a sense that maybe you're kind of tricking yourself or trying to convince yourself that these things might be true. Maybe they're not so true. Maybe you're kind of trying to force yourself to be positive when things aren't actually so great. And I think that ambiguity is actually implied in the song itself, and it's an aspect of it that me and Hugh wanted to really bring out and make people think about with the video, because we were kind of afraid that people would just take that song as a genuine list of positive affirmations with no vagueness of the actual meaning or the possible counter meaning of them.
Yeah, that's actually very well said. It's sort of, it's very appropriate for a rather confusing time that we're all living in with quarantine and the pandemic, and just, I don't know. It's relatable to this year for sure. The album's name actually was inspired by a line in a play by Irish writer Brendan Behan, where was an effort to balance sincerity and insincerity. But more broadly, it's about the battle between happiness and depression and the trust issues that can form tied to the both of those feelings, end quote. So that's where the album title and the song title, I guess, comes from. And that's from lead singer Brian Chatton. Explain that quote and where that inspiration comes from, if you would.
Okay, well, I suppose that that song, Hero's Death, was the first song that we had written for the album, and it was actually written by, the lyrics for it were written by Green while we were listening back to Doggerel for the first time. And he was kind of afraid that he wouldn't be able to follow up the lyricism that he had written on the first album, because, it's one thing when you're living in Dublin and you're just surrounded by all of these things to comment on, but then when what you're being surrounded by is like praise for your music and for your lyrics and living a touring life, it's very different stimulus to be taking in, and it's probably very detrimental to your sense of self and your perspective of the world. And I suppose you require a lot of sensitivity and empathy and frailty to be able to comment on things properly without doing it in such a superficial way that it might almost be facetious. And so that writing of those lyrics was in a way trying to put the first foot forward of the second album to kind of defeat that the fear of that, and really be able to take hold of and take control of the second album before any of that stuff hit, which was a great move on his part, Mm-hmm. And we did try to continue that energy as best we could. We went back to Dublin to write the second album whenever we could, although a lot of it was written on the road. And we went back to the same rehearsal room, and it was very much a thing of getting back into the same seat of the first one. But we did have a different headspace, because obviously we weren't living in Dublin anymore. We were just returning there to write. So we had this very transient headspace and very confused emotions of, you achieve what you want to achieve. You start touring, and it's not always enjoyable, and it makes you depressed that it's not always enjoyable, because it's something you've always wanted. But the fact that you're so tired and so run down, you're not even able to enjoy the thing that you love most in the world, it can be very depressing, right? And
it can be a grind, I'm sure.
Yeah, but not to sound. I mean, we're very privileged to be able to do it at all. But
right,
I think we were just trying to write genuinely about what was going on to us and the feelings we were feeling, so that we could make music that maybe people could relate to in some way, because it was just the feelings, and maybe we kept it vague enough that people could relate to it.
Well, we're on. I'm Chad Miller on a Zoom call here with Deego from the band Fontaines DC, calling us from Paris, sitting outside a cafe right now, and we're talking about the new album, A Hero's Death, released on July 31st of this year, 2020, on Partisan Records. Let's do another song from the album, the one that we're playing quite a bit here on the Summit. This is Televised Mind from Fontaines DC on the Summit. You are listening to The Summit. That was Fontaines DC with Televised Mind, their new one off the second album, A Hero's Death, released on July 31st on Partisan Records. I'm Ted Miller on a Zoom call here with Deego, checking in from Paris, France, talking about the new record. And you talked about it a little bit before. The debut album, Doggerel, it received so much critical acclaim. This was listed as Album of the Year on the Record Store Rough Trades website, voted as Album of the Year by presenters on BBC Radio 6 Music, nominated for the Mercury Prize, the Choice Music Prize, got a lot of attention, and deservedly so. How did you and the band react to such positivity from that album? And was there any kind of pressure to make the follow-up album coming off that kind of success or attention?
Well, to be honest, I think if there was pressure, it was really ourselves putting the pressure on ourselves, because we really wanted to not sit on that album too long. We were really afraid of the idea of having to tour that album for 2 years. Sorry, what the hell is going on?
The sounds of Paris. It's okay.
This is the typical French thing. Oh, it's so chaotic. It'll be so quiet tomorrow once the lockdown starts.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But I can understand having a lot of pressure put on yourselves just to, craft a good follow-up record.
Wait for this to pass. It's just part of it. All right. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Whatever happened, I hope everything turns out okay.
I hope they're okay, whoever they're going to.
Right. But yeah, I'm sure you did put a lot of pressure on yourselves as a band to craft a good follow-up, though.
Yeah. We just didn't want to be that band that toured one album for 2 or 3 years and grow sick of each other and our songs because we got so bored playing them. And we were very aware of the difference between touring and making albums. When you're touring, you're forced to be an extrovert all the time. When you're making albums, you're getting to let your introverted spirit be itself and flourish. And that's why we all got into this, because we're musicians, and musicians are people who found a way to express themselves, and oftentimes when they can't express themselves in normal life properly. So being able to make music is very, very important to us at a spiritual level as well, on a well-being level. So we had to do it. We had to make a second album, and it was good to do it.
It's actually a very interesting point you bring up that I've really never thought about, is that you have to totally be an extrovert on stage when performing and doing a live show and getting the audience into it. But yeah, you really are very much more introverted when writing the music and coming up with that. I had never thought of that, but that's an excellent point. That's a good balance that has to be made personally and collectively as a band to, I don't know, just get your mind right and be in that moment in each of those settings. And yeah, you toured a lot behind that debut record, Doggerel, getting up to this point. Does it feel weird not being on the road right now? And not performing these songs in front of live audiences yet?
Honestly, it was nice to get a bit of a break for a while, but now it's getting really weird because we're just I think all of us in the band are just feeling this thing of what is my function in the world now? I'm just a bit lost. We're all just a bit lost for what we do with ourselves. And, the longer we're off the roads, the more difficult it is to say to people that we're musicians when we meet them, and we're kind of just lazy do-nothings, I guess. But I don't know. I think that it's going to be weird that we may have written our third album before we get a chance to play our second album live.
Well, hey, I would say also it's, this is a good time for all of ourselves to give ourselves a break. It's a once in a lifetime thing that we'll never have again, all this extra time. But I can understand that too. I'm sure many of these artists have taken advantage of the free time to, in fact, I know some of them have, to just start writing and recording new material, inspired by what's going on around us, of course, with the weirdness of this year, with the pandemic, and I would say politically as well. And then that's something else that I've noticed about your music too. I guess as an observer, a lot of the inspiration just comes from your city of Dublin, Ireland, that you're from originally. A lot of pride in your hometown, I suppose, right?
Yeah. We learn to accept it for better or worse, and to love it for its worst qualities as much as its best. I think it's
as an American, we can all relate.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad. I think like when you're in a place like Paris, it's easy to love it. When you're in Dublin, you grow a certain empathy for its rougher edges, and it makes you appreciate it makes you kind of, I think, maybe a better person. Like,
to appreciate the good and the bad, and not be afraid to call out the bad sometimes. That's I think something that we all should hold ourselves and our leaders, our country respectively accountable for. So I think that's a good thing to do. I'm Chad Miller here with Deego, with the band Fontaines DC. We're talking about the second album, Hero's Death. It was released on July 31st on Partisan Records. I'm going to play another song from the album now. This is A Lucid Dream from Fontaines DC here on The Summit. It is The Summit with new music from Fontaines DC. That's called A Lucid Dream, another new song off the album A Hero's Death, their second full-length, released on July 31st of this year, 2020, on Partisan Records. I'm Chad Miller here with Deego, who coming to us via Zoom outside of a cafe in Paris, a bustling burst of activity out there in the streets of Paris this afternoon for you. So, this lockdown and quarantine, it's we've sort of touched upon that. It's everyone sort of reacts to that and handles it differently, in every respect. But as a band and as a human being, how have you gotten through these last few months?
Well, me and Carlos went to the west of Ireland to a house in the country, our friend's granny's house, actually, for 2 months for the Irish confinements. We actually went down, and it was supposed to be 2 weeks at first. We were like, we'll go down here and lay low, and then it turned out it was going to be 2 months proper lockdown. We were like, whoa! So that was pretty. It was really nice because we were in the countryside. We could leave our house and walk around and get some fresh air, but also, I suppose that total social exclusion that everyone was experiencing was still there, and maybe even more so because there's no one around for miles. So it got pretty intense, mental health wise. But I guess we had our art. It was a group of artists there. We had our art, and we had our music to explore and to kind of let out those feelings, and to, I suppose, read some books and watch some movies and stuff.
Yeah, it is good balance. That's sort of how I did it too. Like, I mean, I don't know. I did appreciate the slowed down pace of life, because we all are so busy with all the things that we're doing, and just to get caught up on projects at home, read more books, watch a couple movies I've been meaning to watch, do other versions of self-care. Like I was, trying to go out on walks every day, and it sounds like you had a beautiful excuse to do that out in the wilderness there. And that's not a bad thing either. So that's actually a good thing. So another similar band to you guys is and Idols, and you've toured with them quite a bit. They just released their third record, Ultramono, as well. You've toured with Idols a lot. You're often compared to them. I've always wondered, what's your relationship with those guys?
Like our personal relationship?
Yeah, like, you've toured so much with them and sort of contemporaries in your scene.
I think we mostly view them as like big brothers.
Yeah.
They've gone around the bend a couple more times than we have, and they're a bit more savvy to the world than we are. But if we look back to where they were when we first met them in 2018, at the start of 2018, they weren't as big as we are now. They weren't as successful as we are now. So actually, it's funny. It's like they're always a bit ahead of us, but they're walking the same path. And it's good to get their advice and their experience, and
their wisdom.
They're really good. They're really good. Yeah, they're really good guys as well. Like when we toured with them in America, they were really looking after us. And Bowen was teaching Carlos how to do yoga, and Lee was teaching me how to fix my bass. Because he knows how to do that. I didn't at the time. I do now. And it was really nice.
That's good. That's actually a good comparison. And then that they were kind of like your big brothers. And I love this about the band too. The band got their name from a character in the movie Godfather, Johnny Fontaine, which I didn't really even realize. Tell us for that how that came about.
We just want to allude to the world that we had ties with the mafia, because when we started the band, we were all 20 and 19 years old, and we thought that'd be a really cool thing to do.
Hey, that's and hey, not bad that it came from one of the all-time great movies ever made as well. So very, very
as well.
Cool.
We all loved jazz and Frank Sinatra at the time, so to have a kind of a nod to him as well was really nice.
Very cool. Very cool. I'm Chad Miller here with Deego from the band Fontaines DC, talking about the second album, A Hero's Death, released on July 31st on Partisan Records. I'm going to do one more song here from the album. This is called Love is the Main Thing. It's new music from Fontaines DC on The Summit. It is The Summit with Fontaines DC, and another song from the album A Hero's Death, that one called Love is the Main Thing, and an excellent record from these guys released earlier this summer on Partisan Records. I'm Chad Miller here with Deego, coming to us from Paris, France via Zoom. And Deego, this has really been a fun conversation. Really cool getting to know you and more about the band and hearing songs in this record. Thanks for taking the time. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to do this. And whenever this lockdown ends, please make your way back to Northeast Ohio on your tour. If I'm not mistaken, you probably played the Beachland Ballroom in Cleveland before in the past, if that rings a bell. Yeah, so make sure you come back and see us again. We'd love to have you back, and enjoy Paris. And thanks for taking the time to talk today. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.